Avengers Infinity War was one of those rare beautiful things in fandom where almost everybody celebrated and praised the movie. There was no outrage, no dividing of the fan base, no listicles and all the plot holes. There was barely a shred of negativity to be found, except for Peter Quill. His outburst at Thanos in the finale became infamous across the internet, with many blaming Peter directly for the apocalyptic snapping that occurred at the end of the movie, seeing half the heroes turn to dust. He was criticised as being a useless doofus.
Master do I serve? What am I supposed to say, Jesus?
A spacefaring waste of space who let the side down and didn't deserve to be there. To which I have to wonder, have fans forgotten how awesome Peter Quill is?
Exactly!
Bingo!
Alright!
Across Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 and 2, the man who would be Star-Lord goes from being a thief to a hero to an intergalactic god. He galvanises his friends, he fights what's right, and he tries his best to always do the right thing and never the easy thing. But that doesn't mean that he can't screw up. Writer-director James Gunn took the lovable rogue archetype and flipped it on its head to give us a true underdog in every sense of the word, only for the awesome foursome behind Infinity War to build on that and give us a character that stands toe-to-toe with some of the most powerful figures in the MCU. He might just be a kid from Missouri, and as we'll no doubt explore, kid is the pertinent term here, but in a world of super soldiers and purple space warlords, Peter Quill might just be the ultimate underdog, and here's why. Full disclaimers as ever, I don't want to discount the work of Nicole Perlman, writer of the first draft of Volume 1, or Stephen Markus and Christopher McFeely. Or is that Christopher Markus and Stephen McFeely? I'm sure no one will leave a comment about it if I mix them up.
Laundry list of character defects, all the mistakes I made, largely public.
As I've explained in earlier essays breaking down the MCU, their contributions are duly noted and these films wouldn't be what they are without them, nor would the character of Peter Quill be anything if not for the work of one charisma overload simply known as the Chris Pratt. Oh, and I want to be very clear on this. Guardians of the Galaxy is James Gunn. The circumstances of his firing are unjustified, and I won't be seeing any kind of Volume 3 in cinemas should it not have his involvement. If you agree, don't be taking to Twitter making suggestions for who the Volume 3 director should be. Vote with your wallet. No Gunn, no Volume 3, no exceptions, no mercy! So without further ado, let's dive into the first movie.
You are the light of my life, my precious son. My little Star-Lord.
Let me go right ahead and say it. Peter Quill is the only lead character in the MCU who isn't a superhero. He's not a master martial artist or has a huge trust fund or is part of any royal family or has super soldier serum injected into his veins. That much is obvious. But even compared to the characters that are supposed to be more grounded, Peter Quill is 10 times as ordinary. Characters like Black Widow and Hawkeye, who are super specialists and go hand to hand against robots, or Wakandans like Shuri and Okoye, who live in a futuristic hidden country, are all exceptional. Peter Quill is just a kid who was plucked out of town and dropped into an intergalactic alien world. The things that are out of the ordinary about him come from the circumstances he's been forced to grow up into, and there's nothing to indicate that his skills as a pilot, gunman or thief are anything more than average. Even on Earth he wouldn't be that much to shout about. We've got guys that can shoot arrows without looking, Peter. I'm sorry. James Gunn wastes no time carving an underdog out of Peter Quill in a twofold opening that first begins on Earth with our lead as a child. One of the first things we learn about him is that he's willing to stand up for the little guy.
Why have you been fighting with the other boys again, baby?
They killed little Frog that ain't done nothing.
As his mother passes away, she beckons him to hold her hand one last time, but he can't bring himself to do it. He runs away from the situation rather than confront it, unable to face the reality of what is going on in front of him. Before he has a chance to reconsider, he is abducted by a gigantic alien spaceship. We cut ahead years later to find an imposing masked up figure tracking down a trinket in the ruins of a long forgotten civilization. It's implied that the child we met is now all grown up. But then he starts dancing. Peter Quill never grew up after all, but it goes beyond just his tastes in pop culture and music. He never learnt to deal with his emotions properly, never facing up to the fact that he didn't comfort his mother at the end.
Reed.
He can't have any stable emotional relationships with anybody. He's a loner, he's a loser. But not like a Hollywood loser, he's like an actual loser. You know when films tell you the main character is a loser but they're clearly good looking, charismatic, popular, find it clearly effortless to charm their crush, and they ride a skateboard? Well, Guardians of the Galaxy actually does give us genuine losers.
Established that you destroying the ship that I'm on is not saving me.
When did we establish?
Like 3 seconds ago!
No, I wasn't listening. I was thinking of something else.
And this was really refreshing to see when it came out back in the summer of 2014. Now, I'm not disputing that Peter Quill can't kick some butt. He's got some cool tricks and traps which we get to see used to brilliant effect in the opening chase, but everything that's cool about him is an affectation. His mother's nickname, now an outlaw name.
It isn't Star Prince.
Star-Lord.
Relax, pal. It's cool to have a code name. It's not that weird.
His mask, everything has been carefully constructed by Peter to make him look and sound like a badass, when really the opposite couldn't be more true. In trying to create a modern day Star Wars-esque Flash Gordon type space opera, James Gunn created the ultimate postmodern rogue. Star-Lord isn't Han Solo, he's a guy that thinks he's Han Solo. He's the guy that decided Han Solo would be 10 times cooler if he had Boba Fett's mask and jetpack, so his look is appropriately an amalgamation of the two. His cool outward persona perfectly complements the truth beneath the mask. In a cinematic universe full of larger-than-life heroes, Peter Quill is really just a guy.
I think Chris is a very unique movie star in that he is a combination of being a big masculine guy, but also a very vulnerable guy.
On the commentary for the first movie, James Gunn said, if he had a superpower, it was the fact that he was able to screw up completely and get messed up and trip and fall and then regain his composure quickly to do something heroic. And that's something that holds true throughout the entire movie. Quill gets into so many scrapes, outnumbered and outmatched, just like the best pulp adventurers.
Peter Quill's not a superhero. He's just a guy who uses his cunning and his charm to get himself out of situations.
But of course, Star-Lord does discover the speciality within him that sets him apart from the other Guardians. He's the only one that can manage everyone's flaws and bring them together as one. He does this not only by displaying courage, empathy, and trust,
I need your help.
but something more. Peter Quill takes a disparate band of aliens and manages to unearth in each of them their humanity.
To give a shit. For once. Not run away. I, for one, am not gonna stand by and watch as Ronan wipes out billions of innocent lives.
You are an honorable man, Quill. I will fight beside you. And in the end, see my wife and daughter again.
But they also show him a part of himself he's not been willing to admit. The part of him that's shameless, selfish and aimless. When they realise just how grave a threat the Power Stone poses to the entire galaxy, Peter Quill realises just how small he really is.
What has the galaxy ever done for you? Why would you want to save it?
Because I'm one of the idiots who lives in it!
Peter.
They all find a purpose bigger than any of themselves, and Peter Quill is the only one that can show them just how much they need each other. So it's appropriate that they save the galaxy together. Iron Man defeats the Chitauri virtually single-handedly, but Peter Quill can't without a little help from his friends, and that's great.
You said it yourself, bitch. We're the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Across the entire movie, Chris Pratt brings such a distinctive sense of vulnerability to the role. It's a feat in of itself that he manages to feel small in any scenes when he is quite literally a very tall person. This is exemplified by no other scene better than when he finally decides that he can't run away anymore. He has to face the sweet little wrapped up present he was given the day his mother died. He has to stop hiding it in a drawer so that he can avoid thinking about it, and whether it will conjure sadness or happiness, he can't put it off any longer. In the end, Peter Quill feels a little of both. Ironically, Peter has made the first small steps to being an adult by going back to his childhood.
As a kid, I used to see all the other kids off playing catch with their dad, and I wanted that. More than anything in the world.
If Guardians Volume 1 is all about Peter proving to himself that he's worth something, Guardians Volume 2 is all about testing him with power, what sort of person it would make him, and how it might affect his ego. In this movie we finally get to meet the man we've heard so little about, Peter Quill's father, who turns out to be a sentient planet masquerading in a handsome Kurt Russell flavoured avatar. I touched on it a little bit in my MCU rankings, but as someone who didn't grow up knowing their father, and I still don't,
Which happens, dads leave, no need to be a pussy about it. Here's what I need.
Alright, Tony, I was just trying to show you how the movie is authentic to real life experiences to demonstrate its emotional intelligence. Anyway, what I was going to say is that Peter's reaction feels really genuine to me. I've seen comments on the interwebs before suggesting that he seems quite chilled out about meeting his father for the first time, having never had the chance to carve out a relationship with him before, but honestly, I totally feel that. By the time you get to your late teens and adulthood, it's kind of too late to really have a father, as in emotionally you've missed out all the moments that everyone else has gotten to experience with theirs. It's too late. I don't think you take it as this big life-defining moment. Your life has already been defined as being without him, and you would be super skeptical, or at least I think I would be, and the way these early scenes play out was something that really hooked me into the movie. I also really love the idea that there was no searching for daddy subplot in this movie. Peter and the Guardians didn't go on an epic quest to find him, or anything like that. He just shows up, Out of the blue, like his absence and terrible excuse for parenting wouldn't be of consequence. As a kid, I always kind of thought that this was how I might meet my own father, that he would just invariably turn up and want to see me, like a fantasy ending. This whole scenario feels like something that could have been drummed up in Peter's head as a child, and for a guy that never really grew up, that's a really tough thing to have to face. If you didn't grow up with one or more absent parents, I'd love to know if you thought this setup was authentic as I did, whether you could relate to it, and whether or not it pulled you into Peter's plight. Ego's arrival also allows Peter to open up further with his teammates.
As a child, you would carry his picture in your pocket and you would tell all the other children that he was your father, but that he was out of town.
That's sweet as hell. The way Zoe Saldana plays it here is really endearing.
I love that story.
She loves this guy, not because he needs fixing, but because in spite of all the stupid things he says, the showboating and the arrogance,
If what's between my legs had a hand on it, I guarantee I could have landed this shit with
he is capable of being emotionally intelligent and genuine. She just doesn't get that Peter Quill 100% of the time. He's not there yet.
If he ends up being evil, we'll just kill him.
This is also excellent anti-foreshadowing. There's no way you'd expect it to go literally how she suggests, because of the way we're taught to understand narrative surprises. This line makes you think anything but that can happen. So the team go to stay with Ego and the fantasy feeling continues, all just for Peter. He gets the validation he always craves, not just from his biological father, but kind of everyone in general.
And when I heard of a man from Earth who held an infinity stone in his hand without dying, I knew you must be the son of the woman I loved.
Note how he doesn't word it in a way that emphasises any of Peter's ingenuity, will, or quick thinking that saved the day, but rather the part of him that most represents Ego himself. He doesn't really see him as valuable for his spirit, merely the power that connects them. Slowly but surely, the confident stroking and effort his father puts into him starts to pay off, and he lets his guard down a little bit more every time.
Over the millions and millions of years of my existence, I've made many mistakes, Peter. But you're not one of them.
He gets answers for his absence, but again note how he never says he's sorry. He gets to play catch with him just like he's always fantasised, and he even gets the ultimate gift.
Yes! Yes! Whoa!
Ego banishes Peter's feelings of inadequacy. On paper, having Peter Quill discover he has dormant cosmic superpowers sounds like a terrible idea, but the movie makes it feel like a natural next step for the character's story because of what it gives him as an emotional arc. As soon as he learns he has these powers, his worldview changes drastically.
I get it. You're jealous because I'm part god, and you like when I'm the weak one.
This is completely delusional, and as we saw in an earlier scene, Gamora's never looked down upon the person Peter is. But after just a taste of his true self, he's replaced insecurity for unyielding arrogance. It's sad to see a guy that literally saved the universe fail to see his own gifts, blinded by the idea that he's meant for something more important because he's told a bunch of lies by an entity pretending to love him. But of course Ego is so convincing, and when I say he's pretending, maybe that's not strictly true. I think you could go either way when deciding whether or not Ego truly loves Peter or loved his mother. I think he does love them, just not in a way that fits our understanding of the concept. He sees himself as omnipotent, he loves people that adore him and shower him with praise for the deity he feels he is. He loves adoration, not people. His goal is to get Peter to think the same. It's why he takes gifts from his mother, such as the mixtape with Earth songs, and bends the gesture of love and caring that they are to suit the narrative he is trying to will into existence.
You know, Peter, you and I, we're the sailor in that song. The sea calls the sailor back. He loves the girl, but that's not his place.
So is it any surprise that Ego thinks showering Peter with all of this knowledge forms a bond that allows him to tell him this?
It broke my heart to put that tumor in her head.
Ego feels confident enough to tell Peter the truth because he thinks he has him. Truly he thinks lesser of him, that it would only take a few romanticised memories and kind words to manipulate him. Just like in the last movie, Peter's humanity is what provides the catalyst for saving the day. We don't hear his opinion on his godhood until several scenes later, but this is the moment where he decides it's not his way. Peter Quill is the everyman of the MCU, and he doesn't stand on anyone's shoulders for anybody, and certainly not his father. He just expresses it as only he can, which is shooting him to high heaven. Peter wastes no time deciding Ego's gotta go, and the team plunge to the centre of the planet for a battle with his deranged excuse of a daddy.
What a day.
I absolutely adore this line. Let's just think about everything that's happened to Peter in the last couple of days. He fell out with Rocket, almost got his friends killed, met his dad, mistrusted his dad, played catch with his dad, trusted his dad, found out his dad killed his mother, and tried to kill his friends, and what does he do? He shrugs it off, thereby showing the incredible power he has to stay positive, true to himself, and focused on what needs to be done. This was the guy who just moments ago had an outburst of emotion, but when people need him, he's there. These contrasting moments perfectly capture the constant internal struggle of Peter Quill. He's vulnerable to losing his cool, he's privy to doing the wrong thing, but he always strives to try and do better. That's what makes him interesting. As the battle for the universe rages on, Peter and his friends become out of their depth.
You cannot deny the purpose the universe has bestowed upon you!
Ego is kind of like the dark Uncle Ben. He's basically telling him that with great power comes great responsibility, but he takes it a step further. He thinks their level of power not only mandates responsibility, but executive control. He's like an intergalactic Dick Cheney if he traded in donuts for trying to bang your mum. This all culminates in one of my favourite moments in the MCU. Just as everyone is about to die, as Peter is imprisoned and Ego's god delusion reaches a fever pitch, the first few notes of Fleetwood Mac's The Chain starts playing. The only time Quill's music isn't diegetic, because he doesn't need the Walkman to be connected to his mother and the values she taught him. And then Peter Quill readies Ego for a smackdown with the most Peter Quill line possible.
You shouldn't have killed my mom and squished my Walkman.
As heroes picking themselves back up moments go, this is right up there with Spider-Man 2's strong focus on what I want scene. It's only at this point in the movie does Peter realise it's not his newfound powers that make him useful, it was never his true calling, he had it all along.
If you kill me, you'll be just like everybody else.
What's so wrong with that?
He doesn't need his biological father, he never has and he never will. He saved the universe twice with the family he chose. Which makes this shot all the more satisfying as Peter waits to die content. But of course that's not what happens.
He may have been your father, boy, but he wasn't your daddy.
This is where the movie comes full circle. For almost the entirety of the movie, Peter and Yondu spend their time apart. As Peter gets closer to Ego and the audience is given just enough to think a relationship between them could work, we simultaneously see Rocket bond with Yondu. We find out that he regrets trafficking Ego's children, and that he kept Peter from him not because he was good for thieving, but because he wanted to do the right thing. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean his attempts to raise him were all sunshine and rainbows, as we saw in Volume 1. But in short, Yondu has a heart. I think there is also something to be said for the fact that whilst Yondu acted with autonomy, he also didn't really know much different. Sold into slavery by your own parents, stealing and engaging in piracy your entire life probably wouldn't give you much experience passing on life lessons. What we learn about Yondu in Volume 2 only improves his scenes in Volume 1, like knowing just how much he's trying not to buckle in front of his crew, or the smile he gives Peter heeding all the skills he taught him. All the little hints that yes, Yondu does indeed care for Quill are substantiated in this movie, making the two feel like a cohesive whole story and justifying the decision to call the sequel Volume 2. In many ways, he parallels Otto Octavius in Spider-Man 2, a father figure that lets his biggest flaw get in the way of doing the right thing, whether that be an obsession with ambitions, pride or greed. Their actions take them down a dark road, but they manage to overcome their worst selves and do something selfless with their dying breaths.
I will not die a monster. I'm sorry I didn't do none of it right. I'm damn lucky you, my boy.
He's not a perfect father, the movie makes that abundantly clear and never tries to excuse his greedy or malicious behaviour. Rather that, at the very end, it's still our choices that make us who we really are. At the 11th hour, Yondu makes the right choice, and he does it all just for Peter, proving that he really does love him in a way that Ego never could. What does this mean for Peter? Perspective.
Sometimes that thing you're searching for your whole life, it's right there by your side all along.
He knows that he was loved, that he was worth saving, worth dying for, on behalf of not just Yondu, but all of his friends. The Guardians fight for the universe at the end of Volume 1, but in Volume 2 they're fighting for Peter. They strengthen their bond as a family unit, and Peter learns that it doesn't really matter where he came from, as long as he keeps moving forward. Knowing just how hard it is to raise anybody makes him rethink his temperament towards Baby Groot, and seeing just how much his ego could cloud his judgment makes him open up properly with Gamora. Yondu's funeral is emotionally resonant with the entire movie. It's about coming together, putting your differences aside and seeing the best in people, even the ones that make mistakes. I can usually keep my cool during the funeral scene until it gets to Kragling's cheer.
It's always been the same.
Oh I see a lot of people get lukewarm on Guardians Volume 2, and I understand that. As an adventure it takes a lot longer to get going than the first, it's not as tight, and it didn't have to win anyone over, but the emotional highs it reaches are some of the most three-dimensional, affecting, and heartwarming of the entire MCU.
Swear to me on your mother.
One comment I think the Russos made about Peter that I found fascinating was this. He's sort of like a Peter Pan character. His mother was dying of cancer, he was kidnapped at the age of 10 and raised by pirates. He's unique, and what's fun about him is he's very flawed and he's emotionally damaged. Not only does this corroborate with Gunn's understanding of what makes Peter so special as a character, it also explains why they chose for him to be one of several players in the movie whose failure yields catastrophic results. I think what Infinity War can show us is that people can grow and change, but that doesn't mean that their growth wraps itself up in a neat little bow in time for the credits to roll. The first major thing to note about the Guardians in Infinity War is that they're 4 years on from the events of Guardians 2. Peter has a much firmer grasp as a more considerate leader, a friend, a lover and a hero. Despite this, he still wrestles with those same feelings of self-worth, ego and insecurity, except in this movie, as we all know, it will be his downfall. The tragedy of Peter Quill in Infinity War is that he's the guy that came so close to being a better version of himself, but he misses the mark in a gut-wrenching way. If his superpower was luck, today is the day it runs out. His interactions with Thor are an excellent Chekhov's gun in this sense, because they communicate to the audience that Quill's insecure, more impatient side is still lurking within him. He's had time to get used to the Guardians and has come to terms with the fact that he's not the weak one, even realising his own use, but that doesn't mean that he can't fall prey to the same feelings of inadequacy when confronted by these gods and egomaniacs. It's fraught team-ups like this that really show just how much Steve Rogers was needed there to galvanise the people, but that's a point for another essay. The Guardians have a Thanos problem, and none more so than Gamora, the adopted abused daughter of the Mad Titan. Where Gamora comforted Quill, here Quill has a chance to repay the favour. He listens, respects the gravity of the situation, and understands that she would never get him to agree to something so mysterious if it wasn't incredibly important. Remember when they argued in Volume 2 and he made it all about himself? In the time between these movies, Quill has no doubt matured enough to be a supportive person. The scene on Nowhere is a game changer and a strong contender for best scene in the movie. It always manages to leave a lump in my throat every time I watch it. Having found Thanos, his teammates Drax and Gamora have personal scores to settle, and try as he might, he fails to stop them from blowing the element of surprise. He understands that letting his emotions get in the way of the greater good is foolish. He also gets some of the best lines in the movie delivered in a row.
Let her go, Grimace! I like to think of myself more as a Titan-killing long-term booty call. I'm gonna blow that nutsack of a chin right off your face.
Also, do you remember what I said about this moment in Age of Ultron? On the other hand, Captain America faces Ultron out of his depth and gets on with it anyway. That's a freaking superhero. Well, that gets kicked up to 11 here, as we see ordinary guy with a gun Peter Quill face the toughest creature in the universe, who kicked the crap out of the Hulk, and that was before he had Gamora hostage, before the might of 3 Infinity Stones. Unlike Cap, who could hold his own to a degree if not outmatched, Peter is hopelessly outgunned. This is a David versus Goliath moment. To anyone who thinks Peter is being a weakling in this movie, would you have the Infinity Stones to say this to your girlfriend's dad?
I'm gonna blow that nutsack of a chin right off your face.
As of the time of writing this essay, this is the very last time Gamora and Peter see each other, and it serves as the icing on the cake for what is easily the most touching, most genuine, most well thought out relationship in the MCU. The key reason I think they've both been so interesting to see develop is because I think that what Gamora likes about Peter is also exactly why she's always been hesitant. His immaturity can often translate to playfulness, upbeat optimism, and a sense of fun that she clearly never got to experience. His attitude shows her a different side to the galaxy, but in turn also exemplifies everything wrong with refusing responsibility and letting your ego get in the way. Both of them had shitty childhoods and dealt with them in 2 completely different ways, one shutting themselves off from whimsy and the other jumping headfirst into it. They've both gone too far one way, and as their relationship develops, I think they realise what they can take and learn from each other across Guardians 1 and 2. By the time we get here, they've had time to commit to each other, to embrace their feelings, and have a romantic relationship. They're at the point where Peter will do anything to keep the last great thing in his life alive, and he proves it by honouring his promise to kill her. At least, he tries to. From here on out, Peter Quill is a person consumed by his emotions. They will drive him to do incredible feats, but will cost him dearly. We get to see the former firsthand when he pretty much single-handedly takes on the Avengers on Titan, giving Iron Man a run for his money and holding Spider-Man at gunpoint.
Yeah, you don't want to tell me where she is? That's fine. I'll kill all three of you and I'll beat it out of Thanos myself, starting with you.
He's not messing around. Gamora is one of the people in his life that means everything to him, and he will do anything to defend her. This is probably a good time to mention Peter Quill's intelligence, as I see that come up a lot as another reason to dislike him as a character. With Peter's intelligence, it's like, yeah, sure, people are down on him because they say he's stupid. But he's not stupid, he's uneducated, and there is a crucial difference in that. This is a guy that was taken out of a state school Earth education very young, forced to learn how to be a pirate and a thief instead of getting the chance to invest in a degree or pursue a trade, and that's all he's ever known. Yet he's still the guy that comes up with the only successful plan to take down Thanos. What was Tony's plan again?
Pretty simple, we draw him in, pin him down, get what we need. Definitely don't want to dance with this guy, we just want the gauntlet.
Yeah, they would all be dead right now off the back of that half-baked, gung-ho excuse for a battle plan. Again, they need Steve Rogers, but that's besides the point, Matt. I'm not saying Peter Quill is a genius or smarter than someone like Tony Stark, but let's not forget that the latter was born into a filthy rich family and had access to one of the best educations and resources on the planet. Before we start with the put-downs, initiative and what someone chooses to do with their gifts are far more admirable than the things they had bequeathed to them. Can we also give the benefit of the doubt to Peter for being forced to interact with the first humans he's seen since the night his mother died? What it means to be human, pop culture, emotions and all, is stuck in a time warp for Peter, so to meet the likes of Tony Stark and Stephen Strange must be incredibly hard to deal with, considering neither of them do anything less than give bad first impressions.
I'm Peter, by the way.
Dr. Strange.
Are you seriously not going to shake that kid's hand, Stephen? And so the fight ensues and all of our heroes work in tandem to fight Thanos, leading to some awesome moments as Peter gets some good licks in. It's great to once again see him using some of his traps and tricks from the first movie, and really look at some of the talent on display here. He's the only one without any kind of powers. He's just a guy. It's like watching Han Solo doing his best to keep up in a lightsaber fight, and still managing to wound somebody. The fact that he manages to be just as useful as anyone else there is a feat in of itself. And then he goes and spoils it all, of course.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't!
Remember what I said about Peter understanding that letting emotions get in the way of the greater good was foolish? Yeah, well, it turns out he's a complete and utter hypocrite. Drax lost his entire family, whereas Peter hasn't even gotten confirmation that Gamora is truly dead, and yet that's all he needs to become deaf to Tony's advice and make a futile attempt to beat Thanos. On the other hand, Drax has had years to come to terms with this. Peter has lost literally everything around him his entire life. He didn't have the luxury of education that afforded Stark, or the many years of royal bliss that Thor enjoyed. His entire life has been one long quest to find some semblance of meaning in a galaxy that has taken things away without rhyme or reason, and Gamora was the final straw. The look on his face here just reminds me of one of the best character moments in John Wick, and I think the way he sums up what the murder of his dog meant to him kinda sums up the way Peter is feeling.
In that moment, I received some semblance of hope. And your son took that from me. Stole that from me. Killed that from me!
There's way more going on in this scene than simply Peter getting it wrong. It was his choice to take the actions that he did, to stand hypocritical in front of his best friend, and to ruin everything when they were so close. But they wouldn't have gone half as close without him. The last two beats of the movie that we get with Quill show the audience just how much he knows in his heart that he failed everyone. It's a feeling that Peter Quill is all too familiar with, and yet this time might have stung more than any other. Then to top it all off, he gets to witness his friends become wiped off the face of the universe before feeling the exact same thing happen to himself. Unlike Peter Parker, young and full of energy, his whole life's dreams still ahead of him, passionately refusing to face death, Peter Quill seems indifferent. Compare this to the last time he faced death, content, and now he's just given up. If anything, I think what you need to take away from the story that's told across all these movies is that tragically, Peter Quill is screwed up for life in a way. There's some things that will always haunt him, there's some traits that have been so instilled in him that it will always be something he needs to keep in check. That doesn't mean he can't overcome his flaws, it just means that the internal struggle to be a calmer, more collected self will always be present. Unlike the last two characters I dissected, Tony and Thor, Peter doesn't currently have a chance to make things right, joining the likes of Doctor Strange, Black Panther and Spider-Man in existential limbo. But if let's be honest, when he returns, I'd like to see him come full circle and finally lay his internal struggle to rest. Whether or not that's with Gamora is something we'll have to wait and see confirmed.
I have a family. They're alive because of you.
Peter Quill never asked to save the universe, and 2 out of 3 attempts ain't half bad. It's probably about as good a hit rate as any normal person could accomplish if they're brave enough and try to do the right thing. That's what makes him the ultimate underdog of the MCU, and one of its greatest characters. Perhaps its very greatest. Full Fat Videos is going to strange new places. Full Fat Videos just got upgraded, and along with that, we're upgrading our Patreon with new tiers and rewards just for you. We don't unfortunately monetize most of the videos on the channel because it has copyrighted content, so something like Patreon could really help us make Full Fat Videos self-sustaining, and it'll allow us to make better videos and better content for you. For just $1 a month, you'd be helping us out a great deal already, which is why we thank you at the end of every video. Not to mention you'd get exclusive access to Full Fat Milk Posting, a Facebook group where you can talk to us about movies, TV and games, as well as some memes. We like a bit of memes.
For $3, you'll get access to everything from the previous tiers, but you'll also get the chance to watch our videos 1 day early, as well as get access to exclusive scripts and bloopers.
For just $5 a month, you'll get access to everything from all the other tiers, as well as exclusive access to ask the questions for our monthly Q&As.
And that's not all. For just $10, you'll get access to all of the above, as well as an exclusive commentary track picked by you.
For $100, I mean, you'd be keeping the lights on, so we'd really appreciate it, and we'd probably thank you at the end of every video on camera. You'd be really helping us in any way, shape or form if you could consider contributing to our Patreon. We love making this stuff for you guys and we'd love to keep making more of it. So thank you, and thank you for watching. We're off to go make some more of that juicy content. We'll see you next time. Stay milky.